Coming into this race, Japan and USA are already in the final, and it's a fight between New Zealand, Spain and possibly GBR to take that third spot in the final. This is one of the most dramatic starts we've seen on SailGP. We see Japan here just under Spain. That makes Spain windward boat, and the rules dictate that the windward boat has to avoid the leeward boat, so Japan can control which angle Spain sail. Let's have a look at how this start panned out.
Been eliminated from contention. 22 seconds to go till the start. Outridge and Spain here, they're really close to the start line. Sarafagis looks...
So look how far Japan are taking Spain up here. Their plan is to push Spain out at this mark, as France were pushed out last start. The trouble is Japan have got a long way to sail to this mark, and they're having to sail at an upwind angle, which means they're unlikely to be at full speed at the time of the gun, whereas these boats below have an opportunity to bear down and accelerate and reach that first mark first. So risk here from Japan. I can only think they're doing this because they know Spain is their major threat. They've been performing well so far in SailGP, so Nathan Outridge probably doesn't like the idea of being in the final up against them.
Could have a gap to dive through in the middle at 14 seconds, but who can get on the foil? Robertson needs to find some space. Sarafagis backs away. It looks like Outridge has control of the start line here with 5 seconds to go. We're turning. Can Robertson fit in at the top end of the line here, or will he be shut out?
So really Japan want to be bearing away now. They're going slow, but clearly their focus is on forcing Spain to go beyond this mark, tack around and have to come back round and take up their position at the back of the fleet.
Outridge, oh my word, at the top of the line, breaking the line first there. It's the USA, but they're over the line early. They must drop Robertson. Outridge has taken...
So USA over the line early here. That means they have to drop back, and this was the start of a bad race for the USA.
Saying OCS USA, target Japan, targets Japan.
Wow, what an aggressive move. Outridge has shut down Robertson's weekend.
Oh my word, Jimmy.
Oh, the Japanese...
So look here, Spain going really slow. That's really painful for them in a race they really need to perform in. Interestingly, we see them make a bit of a comeback in this race, which is really impressive considering what happened at the start.
Already in the final, and they shut the Spanish team out. That is the most aggressive thing I've seen.
If you were going to go to a final, would you rather Sarafagis or Phil Robertson in there with you, Freddie?
I wouldn't fancy either of them. They both duffed me up.
So the USA penalized as well, crossing the line too early. It's Australian Tom Slingsby with by far his best start, best performance so far here.
Right, so Australia round first. New Zealand the first boat of the boats fighting for that third spot. Interestingly, Japan here almost last after pushing Spain up. However, Japan managed to catch up to first in this race, so we'll keep an eye on them to see how they did it.
The Italy Sail Grand Prix, but they've already been eliminated. They cannot move on to the third and final race.
Nice rounding there by Sal.
So here we see Japan already caught up to fourth because they've been able to come over GBR with more speed.
He kept that very calm and simple, nothing too risky. Nice move there. Slingsby, he boosts away. Denmark, well, it won't be enough if Sarafagis...
So another good start from Australia. They clearly still haven't lost their quality. This just was not a good event for them.
Stay there, but we're now setting up for this bottom gate. Try and keep it simple if you're on board the Kiwi boat.
Full traffic jam as they came off the line. The Americans a little too early. They had a penalty. Not a big loss for them because they are already into the final race. Now it's Australia racing for pride as they come up on gate number 2. Then it's Denmark, New Zealand, and Japan.
Nice round in there by Slingsby, and it's going to be interesting. The Danish, they choose to head to...
Right, interesting decision here from the Danish, choosing to split off, slow down a bit in that manoeuvre. Perhaps they see something out this side. If there was no advantage over this side, then they should have stayed ahead of Japan here, and they'd have rounded ahead and made it very hard for Japan to get around them.
Favoured side of the course, Freddie.
New Zealand jibe off here too, and that allows Japan to catch up from 5th around the last mark to pretty much 3rd around this mark.
Looks like good wind. It's darker water up by the Spanish and the French boats, and that's where Hested has said, what a time to find your form.
So USA here we just see really slowing down. I'm not sure if there's a problem on board here, or perhaps Spittle has just given up because they really don't need a result from this race. Perhaps they're just testing everything out, seeing where the wind is, seeing where the game features are, and just prepping for the final race.
3.
Pretty interesting for me here, Todd. Sarafagis has chosen to follow Denmark. He knows the Spanish are too far behind now, surely to affect him. So he's keeping it tight to Denmark, making sure there's no big number of boats between the two of them. And this could be the Kiwi boat, led by Sarafagis, making it to the final. Set there talking to us. He's trying to...
So interestingly here, Japan, who headed over towards that right side, have quickly gained on Denmark. And I'm not sure why they've gained on Australia, but let's see what happens.
Other boats around him, it's tight. What I want to know is where has...
So it looks like Japan coming out towards this right side, quite soon tacked out towards the left side, where the Danish thought there was more wind, and we can clearly see both boats going faster. Australia, like last race, coming out on this left side, never really paid for them. Sometimes keeping it simple in sailing and just banging it out to the same side each time can pay dividends.
Outridge come from? The last time I saw him, he was shutting the door on the Spanish with a penalty. He's now showing up on the leaderboard in first place, sailing towards the favoured side of the...
Right, New Zealand are lying in fourth now. They've got quite a healthy lead over Spain to make that final third spot. However, as we see, they're going to receive a penalty, so let's see if we can keep an eye out for what happened there.
Where has Nathan out?
So New Zealand coming across here on port tack. That means they need to keep clear. They've got the wind coming over their left side first. These boats with the wind coming over their right side first are on starboard. So this is where New Zealand pick up their penalty.
Come from? The last time I saw him, he was shutting the door on the Spanish with a penalty. He's now showing up on the leaderboard in first...
So annoyingly, the camera shot has just changed at the wrong moment here. That's part of the problem with SailGP, with just focusing on the action at the front. It looked like New Zealand tried to cross GBR there, but couldn't quite make it across, which meant GBR had to duck, which they shouldn't have to do, and New Zealand received the penalty.
Sailing towards the favoured side of the course. What's that guy done there?
He's fast in the light. He's fast in the light. It doesn't matter where he is in amongst the fleet. He just has the ability to move forward.
This is the umpire's penalty, New Zealand relative GBR.
Yep, so that's painful for New Zealand if they want to make the final race. Interestingly, Spain has climbed back in there, thanks partly to a bad race on the USA's part.
New Zealand relative GBR.
So the Kiwis are going to have to drop back behind Great Britain. That is going to be a huge, costly mistake.
Well, there's 1 point back for the Danish against the Kiwis as the Danish move up into third.
Now, New Zealand carrying on sailing here. They need to slow down and get behind GBR, who they infringed. If you don't take your penalty quick enough, then you can have a subsequent penalty put on top of it. So I don't know what New Zealand are thinking here, but they leave it too late to take their penalty and they receive a subsequent penalty, which really hammers their chances of making the final.
Scoreboard is very dynamic. Could that be the thing that leapfrogs the Danes above the Kiwis?
We heard umpire Craig Mitchell there. That was a port and starboard incident. The Kiwis clearly thought they could cross in front of the British, misjudged it. But umpire Craig Mitchell, wow, he is not going to be a popular man in New Zealand right now. We didn't see how close it was, but he's still got the penalty. This distance he has to drop will be growing all the time. There's the blue line. He needs to get back behind
That's
that
a
blue
long way
line.
back. That's a long way back for the Kiwis to get behind the Brits. They're going to lose 2 boats here.
This is the
So the umpire's just about to come in here saying that New Zealand have left it too late to take their penalty and they'll get a subsequent penalty. Looks like tactically it wasn't too bad of a decision for New Zealand to wait to get behind GBR. They put their tack in now. It looks like GBR are going to cross them anyway, so they could have ducked behind them and cleared their penalty that way. They've just left it a bit too late for the umpire's liking.
second penalty onto New Zealand, not doing it quick enough. Still relative GBR, still
Booking a
relative
holiday in New
GBR.
Zealand if I were Craig Mitchell right now. And at gate number 3, Tom Slingsby, he knows how to lead a race, doesn't he?
So Tom Slingsby round first there. He's recovered a bit, heading back out towards this left side, looking downwind, which hasn't particularly worked for him in previous races. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on that side.
Around gate 3, up on the foils, Outridge, I have no idea where he's come from. No doubt some good wind shifts, but more importantly, good boat speed. And going into this final for Nathan Outridge, surely seeing Jimmy Spittle in last place is just the kind of caveat he needs to boost him in. Sehested still doing.
Right, so here we see just behind the results board, Spain coming in here with some speed on port. They'll really close the gap on the fleet here, which allows them to get back in this race and ultimately make that final three.
Job, but now being chased down by Great Britain. And Paul Goodison, I think this mathematics is about to get a bit harder, mate, because I can see the Spanish coming into shot as well as Denmark round in third and Sehested looking for opportunity.
So leg 4 of 6, they'll go down, come back.
So here we see Spain seem to get a better angle into the mark. They're able to sail the ley line angle to the mark in this case, whereas France and New Zealand were having to sail a bit lower than the ley line, which indicates Spain got a shift and possibly more wind as they got both their hulls out the water, whereas we see the white line trailing off. France and New Zealand indicates they've both got their leeward hull, the hull furthest away from the wind, dragging in the water.
And it's the blast to the finish line. Japan goes back into the lead, just barely ahead of Australia, but keep your eye on Denmark.
Painfully slow tack there from New Zealand. Spain with speed are going to come over them, and really it's Spain's race to lose at this point.
Australia's been eliminated. Japan's already in the final, so it's going to be a battle between Denmark, Great Britain, France, and New Zealand. Spain on their way up, and the USA out the back, currently sitting in eighth. They don't need the points. They're already into the final as well.
Round the outside for Robertson and Spain. I'm happy to put my neck on the line, and at the moment that will be Phil Robertson finding his way somehow into the final.
Right, so skipping ahead a bit, we see on the final beat to the finish, Australia and Japan still at the top of the fleet. Australia seem to really like this right side. Perhaps it's working for them this race, but Australia just leaving it a bit too late to make their comeback.
Executed that manoeuvre better. It's not going to be easy. 75 metres would be my guess at the moment, Todd, on that sheet there. And we can see the fly time, it's nearly level, but the boat speed on the Kiwi boat right now, that distance is coming down. When the boats come back together and get close to each other, Sarafagis will be the boat on starboard tack with the right of way.
Great Britain, France, and Spain and New Zealand are still all battling out to see who will join Japan and the USA in the final race of the day. And remember, points do not carry over.
So if the Kiwis overtake the Spanish here, they'll be tied on points, then it would go to a tie break, and that would be the team that finished ahead. It is...
Right, so this is really the crucial point. New Zealand have got back into it a bit at this stage, but as we know, tacks can be costly if they're not performed precisely right, and we see New Zealand already starting to slow down here. If they're on course to meet here, then Spain will have to duck behind New Zealand, but it looks like Spain probably just have enough speed to make it over New Zealand. It depends how slow this tack from New Zealand is.
Match race between these two boats coming together in the middle of...
So we see there, slow tack. New Zealand really have to bear off, so they're not making any progress upwind at this stage. Bearing off allows them to get on their foils to get that speed up, but it's going to allow Spain to keep ahead of them.
Screen. What will Phil Robertson do? Will he face him and tack in his breeze?
Kiwis did a bad tack. Well commentated, Phil, I agree. They spun a bit too far. Phil Robertson will find some space, set up to the right as he is.
One, turning.
That boat. Oh, that's my wheel. Florian Trittle takes the wheel out of the tack there.
So just saw there, nice tack from Spain, considering the light wind, keeping the hulls largely out of the water.
Quickly up on the foils. I think that tack was good enough. As somehow Nathan Outridge, maybe we call him Harry Houdini after this one, Todd.
So interestingly, I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Last time we saw them halfway up this beat, Outridge was out on the left side, Australia on the right. It seemed going out the right often didn't work for Australia today. Obviously there was exceptions, but potentially it was just less wind which lost it for Australia on that last upwind leg. But still a respectable result for them.
From shutting out the Spanish at the start, and he's looking to charge his way to a victory here in race 5.
Well, Phil Robertson may get another shot at Nathan Outridge after that maneuver, as looks like Japan is going to take the win in race number 5. They don't need the points. They are already into the final. Australia will come through again. As we've mentioned, they have been eliminated from making it into the final. But Nathan Outridge, again, guys, it's a light breeze situation. Put your money on Outridge and SailGP.
Another nice race win there for Outridge. As the commentators were saying, it seems like Outridge is the one to watch in these light wins. However, what's interesting is the race behind them between New Zealand and Spain. Let's see how this plays out.
Some come back, sailing the boat fast. Sling's been nice to see, but the real race here...
Right, Denmark still keeping pace here. Goodison having a decent race, and Spain here in 6th. They may be okay in 6th ahead of Sarafagis, but to be safe, they really want to be keeping ahead of this French boat, which means they have to pull off a good tack here and make this mark in 1 without having to head up too close to the wind, which will slow you down. Let's see which of them wins out.
Robertson tacks right on his wind. There was an interesting bit of communication between Florian Trittel and Phil Robertson a moment ago, talking about the numbers. They haven't got a Freddie Carr out there on the water with them, so they're having to remember these numbers themselves. Look at Phil, he's looking back, match race world champion 2 times. Florian Trittel, he's trimming that wing so fast.
Could this be the redemption from the Spanish? They were 1 tack away from making the final 3 in Bermuda. They're in that same position on the race course, and they nailed that tack. And that could be the tack that sends them into the shootout.
Look at Billy Besson and France.
Right, so Spain are just able to make this mark. Looks like France have got more speed, potentially because they overlaid the ley line. They went a bit further than they needed to make this mark, but that gives them more speed. And with 10 kilometers per hour more than Spain here, they still got a chance of coming across the top.
Back into play. Remember, they were sitting in 8th place, and they've made a nice recovery. It looks like New Zealand's going to run out of time as they go through the final gate, and now it's a sprint to the finish between Spain and France.
Billy Besson must keep clear if he passes on the right-hand side of the swing. No, look at that. He lines up behind Phil Robertson. It's possible to feel relaxed in these.
However, Spain do just enough to keep ahead, and it's now easy sailing for Spain here to finish with a 5th in this race, which is enough to get them into the final.